Mark Rogers TV going to the ACC to track down every positional unit across the board. We stop at Georgia Tech with Joey Weaver from the Rumble seat to talk about the tackle position along the defensive front. Joey, this is a mixed bag. We went over the numbers before we came on, and some don't look so bad if you look at total defensive stats in regards to yards against the pass and the run and total yardage, 44th in the country. Not too bad, but if you really grind down the metrics in regards to getting to the passer, it didn't look so pretty.
Yeah, absolutely. Defensive line has always kind of been a sticking point for Georgia Tech. I think you especially start talking about the defensive tackle position has been a point where they've struggled to really recruit top-level talent. They've kind of occasionally been able to get those guys at defensive end and at other positions on defense. But that defensive tackle position in particular has really been kind of thin over the last several years under Paul Johnson. And so it's kind of resulted, as like you said, the run defense has suffered a little bit for it. The pass defense, and in particular the pass rush, has suffered a little bit for it. So a major sticking point here. And I think there's a lot of unknowns, and this might be one of the most widely varying groups on the team this fall as far as ceiling and floor.
So while we focus on the tackle position across the defensive front, total, you've got numbers up there with 13 guys in play, only 2 incoming guys. So you got a number of guys who have been in the program but not necessarily contributed much on the field. So kind of set us up from a personnel standpoint, knowing that, hey, these jobs are still up for grabs in August.
Yeah, for sure. The big main returner here is going to be Pat Gamble. He's a little bit of a tweener guy between the defensive tackle and like the strong side defensive end spot. Can kind of do both. Has been a very reliable player. Was a starter last year. Played heavy minutes the year before that. A very reliable, talented guy that they'll lean on that defensive front to really give him a sense of consistency and good push up there. Now, the guys around him, there's going to be a lot of I think there's a lot of uncertainty as far as what they're going to give you. So his classmate, Francis Callen, you might remember, Georgia Tech fans will probably remember that he was actually the second highest rated recruit in his class at Georgia Tech, behind only Justin Thomas. Very, very physically talented kid. I think he was very raw when he came in. He only played like 1 or 2 years of high school football. And the light has just never really come on for him. He's always kind of been that guy that looks like he should be wrecking the place and has never really managed to do it. He looked pretty good in the spring game. The words coming out of spring practice and such that he looked much better. If he can finally, start to reach that potential, that all of a sudden turns Georgia Tech's defensive line into quite a bit of a strength. So he's a guy to keep an eye on, and a dark horse guy to kind of possibly become a bit of a household name around the conference would be Francis Callen. Now, he might end up being beaten out for the starter job by either Cerge-Henderson or Brentavious Glanton. Cerge-Henderson started out last year redshirting, had his red shirt burned as soon as they had some injury issues, needed to replace some depth. He did fairly well. Obviously has some growing pains and things to learn. And I think size is a little bit of a concern for him as far as looking at like the nose tackle position in particular. But his classmate, Brentavious Glanton, redshirted last year, another guy that coaches like a lot. You got a couple of guys who are only a little over a year out of high school. So, again, you kind of don't know what you're going to get from them. And then I think the other really noteworthy guy is Brandon Adams. He was a signee in this recent recruiting class. The coaches stole him from Vanderbilt, really from his hometown, Vanderbilt, just about a week or two before signing day. The thing here to know is that he comes in and he's immediately the second heaviest guy on the roster at about 320 pounds. Really big guy, a lot of that size and beef that they've really lacked up front on that defensive line to help stuff in the run, taking up blockers, freeing up linebackers, things like this. So even as a true freshman, they're reasonably conservative with liking to redshirt their freshmen a lot of times. But Adams is definitely a guy I think will end up playing just for the intangible that is his size right now. I definitely foresee him playing and would not be shocked to see him play, a decent number of minutes and kind of getting a notable role on that defensive front.
Yeah, Glanton, Morgan, Sellers, all guys that come from in-state in regards to high school recruiting there as signees there at Georgia Tech. So, Joey, they say that there are strength in numbers. I think the point is also that there's probabilities in numbers. So if you got 13 guys up front, you're hoping, hey, we could miss on a number of these guys. But if a handful of them can pull through, specifically looking at defensive tackle here, then we've got hope that we can fortify this situation this fall.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is that, again, you've got 7 defensive tackles, I believe, 8, actually, if I count right. And only, none of them were really heralded recruits, especially out of the 6 guys that were, Cerge-Henderson being a sophomore. You've got 3 redshirt freshmen and 2 true freshmen. Oh, those guys, none of them are really these highly heralded 4-star recruits. And so if one of them ends up being a diamond in the rough type, that really shows up as a freshman, redshirt freshman, et cetera, then, yeah, absolutely. You got to hope for that probability to kick in, and it is greater than 0. But again, with some recent, annual struggles, you never know. So I think the future is very bright there. It's just a question of whether it shows up in 2016 or not.
Joey, I'm always looking for numbers, prepping these video segments with you, and didn't come up with a whole lot. So the production theme is exactly you're driving home your point there. Gamble, 2.5 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 38 tackles. He's pretty much the guy that only filled up the box score in regards to the defensive tackle play. So again, the number's not too bad on the periphery, but Paul Johnson had a number of choice words for the defensive line play, and we'll more specifically get to the end position and the pass rushing from that spot a little bit later. Joey Weaver from the Rumble seat setting us up at D tackle for Georgia Tech. Thanks, Joey.
Thank you, Mark.